Good morning, sir. You were here earlier to be sworn in, so I recognize you. State your name for the record, please.
Carl W. Laundrie III.
Thank you very much. Proceed with questions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Laundrie, how are you employed?
Volusia County Fire Services.
And what position do you hold there?
I'm a firefighter paramedic,
How long have you worked for Volusia County?
a little over 7 years.
Did you have any prior experience as a paramedic prior to coming to Volusia County?
Yes, ma'am. I worked for the city of Jacksonville for approximately a year and a half, and then before that I worked for Fire County Fire Rescue.
Before I forget to ask this question, can you tell the board what lorazepam is and what it's used for?
Lorazepam, we typically use it. It's a benzodiazepine. We use it as a part of our RSI sequence, which basically allows us to intubate a patient in the field if for some reason they have a gag reflex or they're clenched because of their injuries. It allows us to get access to their airway. We also use it for chemical sedation as well.
I understood about half of it. So it's a numbing agent or something like that?
Sedative?
Topical?
It's a musculoskeletal relaxer.
Okay.
Basically. Would be the simple way to put it, sorry.
You started to say you can use it as a sedative, to relax somebody or to calm them?
That is correct. We use it to basically what we call chemically restrained patients sometimes that are combative due to head injuries or for whatever reason. We do have a protocol for that as well. So yeah, it's a musculoskeletal relaxer.
And is that a controlled substance?
Yes, ma'am.
The case we're talking about here involves the handling of controlled substances, as you know. What types of controlled substances besides lorazepam do you regularly utilize in your job?
Morphine, Tomidate. Those are the big three that we usually that we have underneath the lock. That we have a log that we transpire from shift to shift to make sure that there's accountability that's signed for them. Basically, the rest of the medications are cardiac medications and advanced life support. They're not under lock and key.
Okay, but certain controlled substances are maintained under lock and key.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the responsibility of the on-duty paramedic to make sure to track these controlled substances and keep track of them?
Yes, ma'am.
And generally, how is that done day to day? When you go to work, what happens? What do you, with regards to controlled substances?
Arrive at work, duty time is about 7 a.m. is exactly, not about, but exactly 7 a.m. in the morning. So when you arrive on duty, the paramedic that is on duty before you guys meet face to face. You get the medications out of the vehicle, you unlock them. You typically, either they're in a safe or they're under a lock and key, and it's 2 sets of locks. So they're in a cabinet. For instance, I'm on rescue engine 18. It's a transport unit. They're locked in a cabinet, and then the outer doors are locked as well, so then there's 2 series of locks. So you go inside there, there's a box that is numbered, and then there's an accountability form that's attached to the box. And you take it out, you inspect the seal that holds the box shut to make sure that it hasn't been tampered with, and you sign for the narcotics or the medications, and then you exchange the keys. And that's pretty much typically how it's done.
Okay, and that's something you do every duty day when you go get there?
Every morning, 7 a.m. On the dot.
I want to approach the witness with a copy of the operating SOG we're talking about today and ask you if you're generally familiar with that.
This is the SOG for Controlled Substance and Accountability. This basically explains step by step what we do, basically, the procedure for what I just described.
Okay, I was going to say including what you just described.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, specifically we're talking about page 3 of that document. It's Roman numeral 4, number 7. And can you tell the board what this section of the directive requires you to do as the on-duty paramedic when you're directed to destroy expired controlled substances?
Yeah, number 7, well basically this is in reference to disposing of expired medication, or if you've administered an amount of medication to a patient and you have a remaining amount that you do not need. You also, it basically describes that procedure. It says draw the controlled substance out of its container and inject it into a biohazard sharps container that is located on each ALS permitted unit. ALS being advanced life support.
Okay, and what does that mean in practice? What do you do with that?
No, basically you're taking whatever medication you have left or whatever medication is expired. It comes packaged in different ways. You either have to draw the medication out or it comes in a Carpi Jet dispenser. which you have to attach a device to expel the medication.
So are you supposed to waste it in some manner? And how do you do that?
You're supposed to waste it into, say this is a biohazard box. You can waste it into the biohazard box. If for some reason you don't have a readily available biohazard box, I have seen in the field where people have wasted it either on the ground or in a sink at the hospital. But basically the idea is that it's witnessed and it's expelled of and disposed of.
And I want to make sure it's clear when you're talking about wasting it into that box, you mean actually squirting the liquid into the box?
Yes, ma'am.
Not throwing the cartridge out of the vial into the box full?
That's correct. Usually they'll put some kitty litter or napkins on the bottom so it absorbs because it's a lot of liquid over time, and then just spill it into the box.
Okay. I'd like to approach the witness and ask if you recognize this form.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Tell the board, please, what that, and I'm talking about the across the top, because we're here today about what occurred on June 2nd with regards to Captain Rollins' handling of these narcotics. Can you tell the board the significance of that, top of that form there?
Yes, ma'am. This is the Controlled Substance Accountability Form. This is basically the form that is used, well, that was used at the time, I will say, to record the exchange and the dates and times between paramedics of control of the keys or, basically responsibility of the narcotics.
Okay. And if you could just walk us through the top line there. This indicates that on June 2nd. Tell us what, where your signature's here. Is that your signature there at the top two lines?
And it's my printed name and signature.
Okay, tell the board just what this information indicates. What does that document?
At the top, anytime you either administer medication or if you add a new stock to the truck, this is where you would, at the top, this is where you would add that in. And at the top here, on June the 2nd, it has 10 milligrams with the lot number added, which means I took stock from whoever delivered it, the amount that was wasted, the expiration date, and then my signature and printed name, and then printed name and signature of the person witnessing it.
And who witnessed that day? Or who signed as witness that day?
As witness, it was R. Rollins, and then signed R. Rollins.
Okay. So am I understanding that that form, standing alone, indicates that you wasted that drug that day in front of Captain Rollins?
That's what that form indicates, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I want to direct your attention to that day and ask you, you were on duty that day at Station 23. Did you have occasion to come into contact with Captain Rollins?
That day, yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay.
That was,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
that day, sometime in the afternoon, I did have contact with him.
When he came to your station, did he tell you why he was there?
He didn't verbally state right off the bat, but I expected him to come every day. Well, not every day, but at the end of the month when we have expiring medications or at the end of their expiration period. I believe at the time they used to be good for 90 days, and it was the time, or 30, it was either 30 or 90 days. Anyways, at the end of that time frame, I was expecting someone to come and bring the new stock of medication in because I knew the next morning it was expiring.
So when Captain Rollins got there, did he direct you to pull the narcotics stock off of your truck?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
He told me that he had a new stock of medication, lorazepam, with him. The particular station I was working at had two sets of controlled substances. It had a set for the squad and a set for the engine because they're both ALS units. So I obtained both locked pouches out of the Pelican boxes as well as the narcotics logs that accompany them.
All right, so when you're talking about the locked boxes, that's what you were telling us about earlier. You had to use keys to get in, to get to these drugs.
That's correct. On those particular units, they're not rescue engines. They're actual structured fire response engines. They don't transport patients. Therefore, all they have at the time, now we have a different system, but at the time they had a big plastic box that was under lock and key, and inside that was a pouch full of controlled substances under lock and key.
Okay, so you went and got the lorazepam out of those two locked areas to
Yes.
do the exchange.
I went in, I unlocked both Pelican boxes, took the controlled substance pouches out of both units, and brought the pouches in with me to the station so that way I had everything in front of me to unlock the pouches.
Okay, and you mentioned, did you say a narcotics log?
Yes, ma'am. Each apparatus has a controlled substance log, or narcotics log is what we call it for short, on it. It has to stay with the unit at all times. I grab both of those as well off both units.
Okay, so when you got into the office, you said with all the stuff, what happened when you got there?
I came inside, it was actually not in the office, it was in the day room of the station. I came in, Captain Rollins sat down with me. I started opening the narcotics pouches, excuse me, the controlled substance pouches in front of him. As I was doing that, he started filling out the top line of my controlled substance form or narcotics form for me.
Is that unusual that he was filling it out?
Typically, it's under the responsibility of the person who has signed for the controlled substance that day. I normally, as a paramedic, don't allow anybody else to touch the forms because that's my responsibility, and it was odd.
Okay, all right, so what happened next? He's filling out the forms, you're getting out the stuff.
He started throwing out the forms. I got the old stock out and asked him, or I went to move the old stock towards him. He had the new stock already set out on the table that he brought in with him. I asked him if we were going to get the carpet jet and waste it. He said no, and he started putting them in this container,
Okay,
or a container like this.
and did you think that was unusual?
Yes, ma'am.
Did it cause you concern?
At